And it is that simple. We are into another live stream episode here on the Long Box Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm the Long Box Punk, and I'm joined this episode by Paul Deeter. Paul, thank you for hanging out with me. I know you are just sweating like crazy in this heat right now, but I appreciate you being willing to sit with a burning laptop on your lap to talk about indie comics, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm really looking forward to chatting, and I have a lot to talk about tonight, so
Great.
saved up a lot of info.
Great. I love that. So, before we go into any of the deep weeds or deep stories or anything like that, we're going to hit Lost in Tarnation. We're going to hit music. I want to talk to you about karaoke. We're going to talk about the convention that you just did this past weekend, all sorts of fun stuff. But first, as any good comic does, let's start with the origin story. How did you get into comics? How did you start making comics? What has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, so I have been a pretty avid comic reader since a child. Childhood, lots of Marvel, Spider-Man, all that kind of stuff. So it starts deep roots there, which probably inspired me to become a writer also. But as far as my actual career as a writer slash creator, I have a lot of deep rooted experience, and in my college thesis specifically was focused on screenwriting.
Okay.
So when I realized that screenwriting is very similar to paneling and visually like painting a picture for a comic book, I found it a much more inexpensive way to, much more inexpensive than making a movie, naturally. And
Yeah.
I haven't made a movie in years, but I write constantly. And it feels really good to be able to write something and actually just put it out there as soon as I could find an artist to just kind of work with it. Now, if I could create my own art, I'd have the whole, factory all together myself. But it's wonderful to collaborate. And my collaborator and artist, his name is Jorge Gabato. Wonderful guy, works at Argentina. But beyond that, when I started screenwriting in college and started making movies and doing all the screenwriting I did, I came to Texas about 2 years ago. I was very inspired and also dealing with a little bit of grief and
Mhm.
trauma that I processed a lot in my writing in a big way. And I tell people this, I might not have told you this yet, but Lost in Tarnation is very loosely semi autobiographical, which
Okay.
can pique some people's interest because there are stories that people that are close to me, and if anybody's ever curious, including an issue two, there are stories that happen within the confines of the comic that are extremely exaggerated, as you might know, based on what you've read, but actually have like slight roots in reality. So a lot of it is processing stuff,
Okay.
processing emotion, processing grief, and screenwriting in general, along with my comic book journey, has been a really wonderful way to kind of have therapy through writing,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where it led me from there.
Okay. I was actually going to ask, like, are anything that, any of the scenes that show up in those first two issues, are they based on like experiences other than like the talking animals and that sort of thing? Yeah, so I, having personally never, so tell me about the book, and then it'll make sense for me to ask that question later. So tell me about Lost in Tarnation. You're
Really?
fulfilling the third issue from your successfully funded Kickstarter. um, I saw an update, I think, end of August. You were sending out the majority of them and had a couple left. So tell me, like, what has this series been like creating, and like what's it all about? All of that stuff.
Yeah, so it's been a really extremely satisfying project creating it. And one of the reasons is because my actual ability to visually manifest ideas comes very writing. I can be very descriptive, and I've been doing writing for a very long time, but I am very inefficient and defunct when it comes to putting a pen to paper or even like visually describing something other than with words, which is just a really very inarticulate way to say I can't draw. I don't do a lot of storyboarding, but the journey has been really rewarding because when I found my artist, and it's funny, we've actually never met. He works at Argentina.
Okay.
And he's just this great guy. We connected on this wonderful Facebook page called Connecting Comic Book Writers with Artists. As simple as that. And I just kind of pitched my idea out there. That's how it started. I was like, it's kind of like a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas meets a little bit of Wes Anderson. I got this goofy ass title that I'm really proud of because it's such a goofy little pun there. And then I just started there and started pitching it a little bit, shopped around a little, and found Jorge. And the experience of creating it has been really great because we don't work with deadlines. We write contracts. That's important. We have a
Yeah.
contract, we have commission, all that kind of stuff. But we work in ebb and flow in our own ways, and he's been very quick on the art, but also very receptive to criticism, and
Mm.
mostly agree. So the process of creating Lost in Tarnation and just letting somebody kind of have the steering wheel while I do the writing, and someone else just kind of like is like, I this is what I see, but tell me if it's good. It's been very good, and there have been little minor irks and quirks there and here and there that we've had to fix, but it's been mostly just letting somebody have the keys to the car and trusting this man with I want to invite him to my wedding kind of thing. It just he's been
Yeah.
doing good for me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you're not the first person to mention that Facebook group that I've had on the show.
wonderful.
Um, which I think is great. Like it's as a creator, it seems like um just the potential to find collaborators is so easily accessible now as opposed to 30 years ago where you had to go into an actual like office building and be like, hey, I want to can I pitch a thing. And so I love that it's getting easier through technology to find incredible artists because his style is so unique. And looking through his Instagram page, it was just like, man, everything he does is just like it's so vibrant.
Absolutely.
Really dig it. So I love that he's the one that's doing this book because his style even lends itself to some of the more surreal moments and scenes that are in Lost in Tarnation that you put Peter through that just really I think are a whole lot of fun. And anytime that you can have a venue called the Boozy Armadillo is just like I love that so much. So
We'll bring it back there. We'll bring it back there in the future for sure. So look forward to
great.
more Boozy Armadillo shenanigans.
So when you first started working with Jorge, was it very much like a um I know you haven't met. Have you done like face to face calls or has it been all just like email or texting that way?
Mostly email and Messenger, or Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. He has Dropbox and all that access to the files that he sends me. He's very, very transparent about that. And he's also very approachable when it comes to the contracts, updating those, updating the times, and working with the Kickstarter. One of the things that really is so wonderful working with Jorge specifically, and I do recommend him as an artist. I mean, he's always looking for work, so I might plug him at some point. But one of the wonderful things working about him is he loves to just kind of pitch you stuff he's imagining. And once upon a
Mm,
time, I did the first contract with the idea of a Kickstarter in mind, and the second issue and the third issue I actually hadn't planned a Kickstarter because it was a lot of work. As you asked me about it, it's like, yeah, the fulfillment is kind of tough. Kickstarters are, you can write yourself, or you can fund yourself into a corner. As weird as it sounds, because you're obviously making money, or producing money from people that want to support your art. But there's still so many little hidden costs that you don't think about. There's shipments, there's stuff like that. There's like, let's say the posters turn out bad. You print some posters and they're like, this is not what I wanted. That's $100 on the brain.
yeah.
I'm complaining about something that's in the past. But that being said, Jorge did a really good job of being able to create promotional materials even without the element of having a Kickstarter for issue two. He
Mm,
just created posters. He created posts. He did little logo designs. He did wonderful little we did some variants together. I don't know if you've seen this one. It's on my Instagram, but I was like, hey, I'm really into Blink 182 right now. I know it's kind of random, but issue four is set in the hospital. So could we do that like Enema of the State cover with glow and just have her like, doing the glove thing, and like,
yeah,
but she's got a tattoo of the first cover on her arm, and then you got the rock star lettering. I
that's
was just like, this is
awesome.
great. Jorge knows exactly what I want. And I think we have a lot in common, him and I think that helps too. As soon as
Yeah.
I pitched it, we worked on this short story together. It's called "Don't Make Me Come Down." It's going to be out soon, but it's part of an anthology, so I'm plugging that too. Very short,
Perfect.
only like 6 to 8 pages. And as soon as he read the script, he's like, "I'm getting Jim Jarmusch vibes." I'm like, "Dude, that's like one of my favorite directors. I love Jim Jarmusch." I'm like, "You got it. I trust you, man. You know, I'm like, you've got this." As
That's
soon as he read it
awesome.
and he said that, I was like, "Yeah, he knows what he's doing."
Yeah, yeah, it's those, like, very, specific details that when somebody gets it or, like, knows the reference or, has that same page, like, "Yeah, no, this is the vibe." Like, those are the people they gotta hold on to because 'cause they're, like the work tends to be so much more just, like, easy. And like none of the work is easy, but it's easier to work with those people instead of having to explain, like, okay, so there's this director and
So here's some homework. Watch Mystery Train and Stranger Than Paradise, and then get back to me.
right, right. And then read the script again and then think of those two. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Especially that you guys met in just like a Facebook group. That's so rad.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
you beat me to it. I was gonna ask you, I was like digging through the issue 3 Kickstarter to be like, all right, what can I like bring up and maybe catch them off guard with. That's a lie. I don't try and catch anybody off guard. But I saw the Blink 182 parody print and I was like, what are we parodying? Because Blink is my favorite, like they're my favorite band. I can
Oh, that's
mark
great.
like moments of my life on what Blink album it was and what I was doing. And so like I have very specific memories and tied to very specific albums. And so I as soon as I saw that, I was like, my antenna are up, like we're gonna fire on all cylinders. I knew that we were gonna get along just fine. Um,
Wonderful.
so you beat me to it, but I love that you're doing that. That's making those prints and stuff like that are just like very very fun nods, especially when you find your people that love supporting the book and like the series and those sorts of things. Then it's also like, hey, I like Blink and he likes Blink, and like these people probably like Blink too, or at least are
Yeah.
familiar with the album. So like, let's do the thing. So, is there something that you've included with your Kickstarters that you, uh, looking back, were like, maybe I should have done that differently?
Yes, that's a great question. I actually this is like a cautionary tale. I'm gonna tell this to anybody who's doing a Kickstarter. You know what's an expensive thing to try to fulfill? And I know I've seen a couple of my friends do this, but they're being better about it. Like I sometimes I call them out. I'm like, "Are you okay doing this? Because it is expensive." And they're like, "Oh, I have a guide." T-shirts. They're a trap.
Mm,
T-shirts are expensive and they can turn out so wonderful. I have a ton left over because I overproduced them for the first one, so I'm just gonna hand them out at some point. I sell a couple of them at conventions, but man, they cost me probably 20 T-shirts, 25 T-shirts, about $500 because of the designs. Yeah, and that's not a lot of T-shirts.
yeah, that's
It's just
wild.
like, yeah, it's just like when you go and you break it down. And I did shop around. I didn't go to like Bob's Emporium and be like, "You're the one I'm going with, number one." I haven't looked around. I shop around for these things,
Yeah.
and I realized the design I promised for my T-shirt, and the reason I didn't want to ever gyp somebody on my Kickstarters, is obvious. But the design I had for my T-shirt, which I really wanted to stick with, had multiple colors. It was like a larger picture. It had
Mm,
lettering, and the little signature by Jorge, which I wanted to include that because it's his stamp.
yep.
And yeah, it cost me a lot of money. So I'm not
That's
doing T-shirts
wild.
again. Posters are fine. My only problem with posters is you have to find something that's a little like. Have you ever used Vistaprint at all? I
Hmm.
really highly recommend Vistaprint. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do a really good job on pricing, bundling, and subscription services if you like to buy in bulk and you're producing art on that level.
Yeah.
But their posters are almost too good quality wise. Like they're the paper stock is so nice. I'm like, I need to buy posters that can roll. Otherwise, they're
Yeah.
hard to ship. That's the thing. And their
Yep.
posters turn out lovely, but they're so like good quality. It sounds like a weird complaint to make.
Yeah, especially when they're the like oversized ones. If it's anything more than like an 8 by 10, then if you get into the 11 by 17s, even those get to be like to get a mailer that size. I
And then not bend
imagine
it.
like Yeah,
Yeah,
and then keep it like make sure you keep this flat. And there's only so much that like please don't bend writing or like media
exactly.
mail on it will do, and it still ends up getting smashed or thrown under a door or something like that.
Yeah,
Um, I've
that's kind of
had
like, yeah.
I have had my frustrations with postal service people.
Oh
um,
yeah.
of just like getting stuff that's just completely trashed, and I'm like, come on, like, or I don't remember what the package was, but it was books, comics, obviously, because that's all I ever get shipped to the house. But it was like the when they shipped it, it wasn't in like a Gemini mailer. It
Hmm.
was somebody I think that just like sent me their comics to read and stuff. And so it was just like in a, like a bubble mailer thing, but the corner had been ripped open and like it was raining, but they just left it on the front step of my house instead of like tucking it back the 2 feet to my front
Yeah.
door, like under the overhang. And I opened the door because I work from home, thankfully. So I saw him walking. My dog lost his mind when he heard her at the door, and so I knew that it was there. So I immediately like went and grabbed it. But it was just like, come on, like give me that 5% effort and like just push it to my door instead of just setting it down on the very edge, like minimal effort where it's just still going to get rained on and wet. And thankfully I was here, because if I wasn't, like those books would have been ruined. So
Yeah. I've
postal
highly
workers,
considered getting
man.
a PO box over the years, especially given my current living situation, my large apartment with multiple people coming in and out, dropping mail off wherever and accessible by anyone. And honestly, it's kind of nerve-wracking sometimes because, as you know, as a collector, I'm sure sometimes these things you order are a $4 comic from like Magma Publishing or something like that, something
Hmm.
little that you just couldn't get at your local store. And sometimes it's a Kickstarter fulfillment of like $100 of comics, and you're
Yep.
like, I don't want it damaged, I don't want it lost.
Yeah.
I have a good friend of mine, and I literally did the highest tier on his last Kickstarter because I was like, I want everything. I'm a completionist,
Yeah.
and it got lost in the mail, and that was a fun conversation to have with him. It did turn up. It did turn up, but it took like a month, and it went like somewhere completely bonkers, and then they brought it back, and I was feeling like a baby. I was so happy.
See, I had one. I made the mistake. This was when I learned what the Australia tier is, which is digital. Just buy digital. For the most part, I've had success one time of the three things that I've ordered from Australia. I've had one of them make it to me, and it's actually from a guy that's been on the show before. Shout out
Hmm.
to Brain Beast Studios, Sean Sunday, my man. He's the only one that got something to me. The other two Kickstarters that I did, the one got completely lost. Like it just never showed up. And
Hmm.
it made it, I got the update that it made it to my hometown, and it was like a mile away at the post office. It
Oh my
just
gosh.
never made it from there to here. And I went in, gave them the tracking number, did the whole thing, and they were like, yeah, I think that's when your regular carrier was on paternity leave. And we had a bunch of people filling in, and there was actually somebody that came in and like stole a bunch of packages. And like I know you're upset about like losing this comic book, but like there was a kid that lost his insulin, and I was like, okay, I understand my problems are very small in comparison to somebody needing medicine, but like,
That's an insane story. Wow.
yeah. And I went and I was just like, are you blowing smoke? Like, there's no way. And I went up for a separate package because I was like, okay, listen, I'm getting another package from Australia. Here's what happened the last time. I don't want it to happen again. And they were like, oh yeah, no, that was that like November-ish of last year. And I was like, yeah, like, yeah, your regular guy was out and we had something. And I was like, okay, so this is real. And they're like, yeah, no, it's the police confiscated like everything that person took. I was like, cool. So just contact the cops and I can get my comic. And they're like, they're probably holding everything for evidence. And I'm like, okay, so I'm still not going to get my book.
That's absolutely like it just reminds me of the memes where you see the pictures of the people that are like, I got something mailed from Oklahoma to Iowa, and then the package listing says dropped in the ocean or something. It's just like worst case scenario. It just the USPS, the UPS, all that kind of stuff. You just never
Yep.
know, I guess.
Yep.
But I would say Kickstarters in general have become a cautionary tale for me, and not entirely a bad one. I've had some really wonderful support over the years. And the first
Hmm.
Kickstarter was a success, and the third one, or the second one for the third issue. And I was able to fulfill everything on the first one, but the third's taking me a little longer for fulfillment. There's just some setbacks with printing. But it's okay because one of the things I realized about Kickstarters, because I don't necessarily want to say don't do them. Once upon a time I was like, just don't do a Kickstarter,
Mm.
because I was just like, I mean, it's easier said than done. we're starving artists. A lot of us, we don't have the money. Even when we're published, we don't have the money all the time to make these things ourselves. But at the same time, just know the variables, the costs, stuff like that, and also understand that in my experience, when you're kickstartering to a bunch of people, I made up a word, to a bunch of people that are probably fans of the comic already. Like the first one was interesting because there were a lot of people who'd never read the comic before, obviously,
Yeah.
who didn't know much about it, who didn't know me, strangers, some of them. And the second time I did it, I had a trust with a lot of the people. And because of that, the delays have not been, the anxiety here is not manifested as bad as it
Mm,
is with the first one, and it's not as real as the first one, because honestly a lot of the Kickstarter stuff, even on the website, they say, hey, rewards aren't guaranteed.
yeah.
They should be, because we're not trying to take people's money, but things happen. The estimated delivery date may be completely different than the actual in-hand date, and I think that's just something that a lot of creators, once they get that wrapped around, that makes it a little easier for people.
Yeah.
And I hope if I do another Kickstarter, and this is a little, I have a couple little sneak peek things to say, but if I do another Kickstarter, there'll probably be one more, and it'd probably be for the trade, and there will be a trade, because Lost in Tarnation will probably be a 6 to 7 issue run, with the potential for the universe to expand with another character I want to develop.
Cool.
So
Now,
yeah.
do you already have that like 6, 7 issues planned out?
To an extent, there's a lot of like puzzle pieces along the way that are missing,
Sure.
or just haven't been created yet, or I get inspired in random moments in the middle of the night, sometimes at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep, while I'm working and checking people in, and I can't find a pen and a notepad. Uh, and that's one of the reasons I really would love to just continue working, one, with Jorge. I want to work with him forever. I love working with the dude. And two, I want to continue with the universe, because I have created a character or two that, if people really enjoy reading and the tone and the humor, there's more of a story to tell. I think that Peter, as a protagonist, may not have, without spoiling anything, the happiest ending, but that doesn't mean I
Mm.
don't love happy endings. And I do like the idea of having a narrative that shifts the focus of one character to another as well. And it'd be very interesting for me to pull this off, because an autobiographical story where the main character doesn't become the main character at the end is a kind of an unusual thing to do.
Yeah.
But I've been writing for a long time, so I'm pretty confident that I can actually I can manifest something at the end there, I think.
Yeah, that's a great way. I think that's a really unique approach too,
Yeah.
to like spin a story so that who started as the main character doesn't end up being the main character.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting idea. So definitely look forward to seeing more of that. I know that you are, like we talked about, getting through the third issue fulfillment. Do you have plans on like the fourth issue? Are you gonna self-publish that one as well? Are you gonna kickstart the rest of these issues leading up to the trade? Or are you gonna try and do more like just
Mhm.
do it yourself and self-publish these and then maybe just do a Kickstarter for the campaign?
Yeah. So without going into like numbers or pulling back the curtain too far, I
Sure.
do. I just got published for the first time, as you know, lesser known comics, and this just happened probably like maybe 2 3 months ago. And everything with lesser known comics is a extremely amazing publishing company that is in its very early ages. I think they've been around for 4 or so years, and don't quote me
Mm.
directly, but they said that the website is still being worked on. They're dropping announcements. They're fulfilling, like, I think they said like up to 20 Kickstarters from themselves, not just each creator, but like the actual company is making and fulfilling these Kickstarters
Oh, wow.
themselves. So they got a lot on their plate. They
Yeah.
they really do, and they are still a independent semi underground publishing company. They're not Image. They don't have the Image
Yeah.
staff or the Image funding at the moment, which is fine. It's wonderful. I love lesser known comics.
Yeah.
But because of that, I would say that issue 4, it does have a title. It even has a cover. I'd be happy to bounce those over to you at some point. It's on my Instagram. It's also on my
Sweet.
Instagram. And the script is actually probably completely done. It's been done for quite a while, so I could say almost everything about issue 4 is done in pre-production and scripting and storyboarding. It's just not. It doesn't exist yet. The art has
Sure.
not been made yet, and it will be made. And I'm hoping it'll come out before the end of the year. I'm aiming for a fall release, and we are on fall, but maybe October or November. But because of the situation that is, again, without pulling the curtain back too much, where I fund the comics, I will not be doing a Kickstarter until the trade. That's my
Mm.
plan right now. Once the issues are done and it's just like, hey, I'm going to put them all together and put them in this book and make a trade. I'm going to throw some fun stuff in for people who back more. No t-shirts. I'm going to do posters. I'll do some prints. I'll maybe stickers again. Stickers are always a freebie. I just hand them
Yeah.
out, and it'll be super fun. And my goal for that one, it'll probably be a longer campaign, and my goal for that one will be much higher because, again, I need to recoup and ship and all that kind of stuff. But
Yep.
each issue I fund out of pocket, and I have been, putting myself kind of emptying the pockets out of it too much lately. So I'm saving up a little bit so I can get to the point where when I reach Jorge with the next contract, he understands that there's not going to be too much of a delay in the installments as to whether, the pages come out 5, 10 pages at a time, the chunks, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And we can just work out a smooth contract with no hiccups, because I think issue 3, it wasn't created as quickly as I'd like it to be. And I don't think Jorge drags his feet at all, but I think that was partially me. I think I had some rewrites and some problems with certain panels. And I think for this next one, I just want everything ready. I want the script to be perfect. And it's very tough because I really liked issue 1 through 3 without being too biased. I really love issue 2. And I thought issue 3 had some wonderful beats that is going to get lost in issue 4, because issue 4 is a um, very surreal issue. If
Okay.
you notice the surreal elements early on, but it almost doesn't exist in our plane of existence at the moment. It's almost all in his head. Without spoiling anything, I'm sorry. I shouldn't speak too soon. I don't think you've read issue 3 yet, but I'd be happy to send you issue 3.
Great. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Also, we've got, I just want to make sure like it's not just we're not just peddling books because we love this book. It's other folks too, like Post Punk himself, Anton Blake, saying the trippiest comic this side of the
Cool dude.
Mississippi. Stoked for more of it, dude. Same.
Anton's a cool dude. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he is. I had a great time talking to him. I definitely agree. Like this comic is very it was very trippy. And like some of the fun of it for me was like, is this a bad trip or is this actually happening? Like what where the blurring the lines of reality and this all like I don't want to say alternate reality, but like not of this earthly plane, blurring that line and push and smudging that barrier a little bit is like playing with that was really fun to read in those
Yeah.
first 2 issues. So yeah, I agree that like I look forward to more issues. I love hearing that it's going to be collected into a trade at the end
Nice.
because I'm a big fan of trades. My brain works in a way that like even though I read monthly comics, by the time I get to the second or the third or the fourth issue, I've already read, 5 other issues or 7 other books or whatever. And then I'm like, wait, what was happening? I don't. And so with a trade, I can just sit down and bang the whole thing out in like an hour. And I love that. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
I love a good trade. I just get antsy, when I want to read the newest Amazing Spider-Man, and I
right.
don't want trades, especially with superhero comics. Just checking in every week. It's tough, and there's a lot of independent projects lately too that I've been reading the floppies for
Yeah.
and getting trades, because I'm not a super completionist when it comes to that, but there are certain ones that are just so good I have
Yeah.
to.
Yep. Yes, there are definitely there's certain series and there's certain creators that when they put stuff out and even like mainstream stuff like the City of Madness from Christian Ward on the DC Black Label
The Batman
was
one run, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
was just like oh my god, good. And I've been a fan of Ward's for a while. I love his art. And honestly, sometimes I'm like, I don't really know what I'm looking at here. But doing that dark supernatural that he did and then writing it as well was just so well done. Even though I picked up the magazine, like because it was the oversized
Yeah.
magazine format, which I'm a sucker for. I have a whole stack of that size books over here to read. But like they just dropped the hardcover, and I'm probably going to pick up the hardcover too, just because it was so stinking good that then I can sit and read the whole thing in one go. And that's that. So, speaking of reading books, man, what a transition. I I love on your Instagram that you're sharing books that you're reading, and like not just like, hey, this was a cool book, but like actually going into like why you liked it. And I realized that we both read The Denim Devil, which I just, dude, that series is so much fun. Just to
Very
like
good.
gush on that
Very,
for a
very
second,
Fincher.
like so good.
Yeah.
It's like horror and it's campy and it's comedy and it's got all this stuff. But like I love that you're posting about the books that you're reading, and going into like what you're enjoying about them and that sort of thing. So I'm curious, like what are the books that are at like the top of your to read pile right now?
Oh, to read or just or recommendations. I guess if it's to read, I have a whole shelf that's off camera. That's just there's a ton of stuff. In fact, this is actually not recommended, but the way I have my comics stacked right now is in this big stack. It's just any comic book creator would be shaking their head and being like, "That is not the way to hold those." But yeah, it's the stack's pretty big. Um, I
I have
am
one of
working
those.
my way through a couple series right now, and they are independent, so I would recommend them. I'd say the biggest one right now, and in the issues like 10, 11, 12, I think are on my to read, or I think 9, 10, 11 right now at this point, is Knights, Image Comics' newest one. That's the biggest one I'm reading right now.
Hmm. Okay.
It's Wyatt Kennedy is the writer, I believe, and I'm going to forget it's Luigi, but I can't remember his last name, the artist, but he is phenomenal, and we've actually connected on Instagram a little bit. So
Oh, cool.
I'm working on trying to get him to read my comic because he comments on my stuff when I post about his, and we've had a couple conversations. And one of the things I really like about Instagram is it almost feels like the barrier between, it's going to sound like kind of corny, but the barrier between fame and fandom is so blurred,
Mm,
or at least almost non-existent. Like you could
yeah.
just have a conversation with Brian Vaughn. Like I almost, like just,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. Some of these artists and writers aren't going to be like, "Oh, I see a DM" or something like that. But if you repost something, throw a comment, tag an artist you really like, you could actually create a little network there, a little flow there between two people. Might not turn into anything, but I think that's very interesting. But as
Yeah.
far as stuff I need to read, I'm working my way through some big ones like Invincible. I watched the series, and I much prefer the comic book series. And I'm also reading Kirkman's Walking Dead because I just
Okay.
have to. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
So a lot of that. But I've also been reading a lot of independent stuff, including this one called The Pedestrian. Do you know
Oh
that one?
yeah. 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 Yeah.
If you
That's
can get him on your show, that would be a very interesting interview. I'd love to see his brain being picked. He's a very interesting guy. I read issue
okay.
one today, and I've got issue two and three. Or three isn't out yet, I don't believe, but I've got issue two on my kind of like my pull box at work, or at
Yeah.
my comic book shop that I used to work at, I should say.
Okay. That's awesome that you used to work at a comic shop.
I did. There's another connection. There was my beginning of Texas career was in comics. I
Oh,
didn't work
cool.
at comic shop until I moved to Texas, and I got to read a lot of wonderful stuff. And since you mentioned my posting about a lot of comics, I would say this too. This is going to sound a little selfish, but one of the reasons I read so many comics, not just Marvel, just to stay in, and DC because I love the characters, but I like to read a lot of independent comics for a couple reasons. One, they inspire me, and
Mm,
two, because there's so many great stories, and it's so cool to see people and also meet these people, local Texans or people in the lesser known comics family or outside of it that I just met online. It's really cool to meet people, understand their drive, understand where they're coming from, if they're funding themselves, if they're published, if they're big, what their goals are, aspirations. But I also like to do it to the fact that, like, I am so terribly terrified that one day I'm going to read something that is just like Lost in Tarnation. And it's going to be some little comic somewhere, or someone writes something and just maybe it's even after me, and they
yeah.
write something and it's just like a hit, and I'm like, hey, I think that's my comic or something similar. So it's like I feel like it's like a double standard. I like to read a lot of stuff because it's like I like to keep in mind what's popular. There's that too.
Yeah.
What are people reading? But also, like, is there something out there like like stuff I'm writing? And if so, how do I avoid that, or how do I respect other people's narratives?
Mm, yeah. No, I love that. And like part of the reason that I wanted to talk about like what you're reading is because one of the first guests I had on the show, Carmen Costa, just is getting ready to launch his third issue on Kickstarter. Proctor 1 through 3. It's going to be launching on Kickstarter soon. But like he does Instagram live stuff regularly, and he's part of the reason why I started doing my Instagram live stuff, because he was just like, just do it. Like you don't
Yeah,
have to
absolutely.
overproduce it. You don't have to think about it. Like just do the thing. And I was like, you know what? Yes. But he said like when he's talking to creators at conventions and stuff, he'll ask them like, what are you reading? And sometimes they're like, I don't know. And he's like, you
Yeah,
got,
or like or nothing.
yeah, like you got to be like, what do you mean? And so I just saw him mention that in one of his videos. I was like, you know what? I need to be better about asking people, because I'm always curious. Like so many people, talking music with people, I find out like everybody's just in different places. The guy that I just talked to like 2 hours ago was saying how he loves hip hop and jazz. And I was like, I don't vibe with jazz at all, but like, great for you. If that's what works for you, man, like, awesome. I wouldn't ever, I like seek out jazz. But so if music can have those drastically different audiences while also still, like, we both love, we both live in Ohio, we both love indie comics, and so, but like music is drastically different, then I'm sure what we're reading might be very similar or might be very different. And if it's different, like, why aren't I reading it? And so I
Absolutely.
love that you mentioned Pedestrian, because I've seen it a bunch on social media and I just haven't picked it up. And part of that is my comic shop hasn't had it on the shelf, and then part of it is I just have really scaled back what I'm buying in stores because I'm doing so many Kickstarters.
Absolutely.
I'm
And
back
then
in so
also
many.
there's space, there's space, and that's something I can tell you have a wonderfully decorated, probably very overstuffed room full of lots of cool things.
Uh-huh.
For me, I'm very limited in my space naturally because I'm staying in a small spot in a community living shared experience. There's my story. Let's go back a layer a little bit. As a starving artist, but yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think one of the beautiful things about being a creator and being a reader and not just a writer and an artist or anything like that
Mhm.
is, again, it's the fame, fandom, blur for famous creators and stuff like that. If I were ever like a James Tinian type, like I'm getting optioned by freaking DC, and I'm also like, I have the freedom to know that I can make something and people are going to read it and
Yeah.
just be like, and something wacky or wild, like he has his fingers in so many pies, and he's so talented. There's a talented guy.
Yeah.
And one of them, and some of them he starts and he just lets other people just take over, which I respect a lot too. But beyond the point, what I mean about that is that I would like to get to the point where, like, if I ever am of a position of some sort of popularity or fame, beyond local, beyond friendship, family, I would
Mhm.
still like to be going to small scale shows, dive bars. If I were a popular musician, I'd still like to get to the point where I seek out a comic in a store or at a Kickstarter. I go into the local section. I go into
Yeah.
the bottom of the local section. And my old comic book store I used to work at had a wonderful local section and a lot of local signings as well with Austin artists and writers. And I'd like to find something that's probably going to be more genuine, more, self like fueled and motivated than a lot of other stuff you might see on the new release wall. And I'd love to get to that point where I just like it. That would be my favorite part about being any sort of popularity or famous person, if that ever happened. Not that it would, but it would just be like, sorry, it would just be like, just the ability to just be like, hey Instagram crowd, or hey Facebook crowd, or hey this panel I'm at, I read this really cool comic by this guy who's probably just blood, sweat, and tears, the whole thing. And it's like I
Yeah.
want to share the love for anybody, because people have done that for me, and that's the important thing. I've had a
Yeah.
lot of positive feedback from some like monumentally cool dudes, guys and girls, and everyone. So cool.
That's awesome. I love the heart of like the strength of community
Mm,
is a very reoccurring theme here on the show, and I love that it is, because I use the metaphor of like the boats in the water, right? Like if my boat's rising, it's not because your boat is sinking, it's because the water is rising, which means every other boat on the water is also rising.
I
And
love that.
so like if I can do anything to add more water to raise everybody else's boats. Like that's part of why I like doing the show is because like as somebody that just loves comics, because like you said, I'm surrounded and I'm out of room, as my wife likes to tell me regularly. Um, which is the other reason that I'm switching to just trade waiting because
Yeah.
I have 12 full long boxes and I don't have any more space in my office for more.
Oh my goodness, you're
So
kidding me.
unless
Yeah.
I start like stacking up, and I don't want to do that. But so I completely lost. This is what happens when you go live and you have ADHD. I looked over and was like, I gotta watch that movie because I have a
Oh, I
DVD
think we were
sitting on top of my
talking
living room.
about like people using platforms to advertise other things. The boats
Yes,
with the rising water.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. So on the wheel. So part of why I love doing the show is because anything that I can do to help signal boost or um, just show like and broadcast the voices of indie creators that are saying, hey, the indie creator space and community is really supportive. Hopefully, anybody that's listening or watching live or after the fact might go, you know what? I keep hearing that there's this community that's really great. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do the thing. And like the more stories and the more creators that we have that are making their thing, the more I feel because I'm right there with you. I feel like the indie comic scene and the creators that are making indie comics, they don't have to worry about like I have this deadline looming, so I just gotta plug and chug and get it done. Instead,
Absolutely.
they can go, I'm going to take the time to craft it to make sure I have the script that I know is spot on and I don't have to rush my artist and they can go at the pace that they need to go to make the best pages possible so I can put forward the best version of this book right now. Like and I think that because of just how indie comics work, because it's not like a, all right, you got to crank out issue 3 next week, and then we need issue
Absolutely.
4 in 4 weeks. At like, there isn't that cog in the machine feel that
Mhm.
it then allows creators to really take the time to craft things and to use Tinian for an example. Like he has now made himself a media mogul with
Absolutely. With
the
his own
Tiny
company
Onion
and everything.
Studios.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
he's optioning stuff for TV, for streaming, for movies. I think I read in one of his substacks, he's talking about possibly even video games. Like, dude's doing
I could see it
everything.
happen. He's
And
got
yeah,
that vibe. He's got that technology meets like dystopia. I
yep.
think that would actually be a really good platform for him. So that's cool to hear that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, like, I think that the more that you just talk to people that are making comics, the more that you find out, like, hey, no, there's people that are willing to help. And if you just
Yes.
put yourself out there, like, you might get some help. So, speaking of community and talking to people, you just did a convention this past weekend, right?
Yeah, so about that, I think I might have misinformed you. I actually was not able to make that convention,
Oh
unfortunately.
no,
I know a lot of my
bummer.
friends who were there, the creators of Outer Space, including Eric Allred, wonderful dude. Benjamin Collins, I believe, was there. I think Ian Walker of Pantheon, great comic, current Kickstarter, was there, but he might have been at another convention. But it was star-studded, absolutely star-studded.
Mm,
And I had my table. Indie Comic Con was the name of it. It's in Houston. They were extremely compassionate towards my situation. They actually refunded the whole table. They did not have to do that.
wow.
But I told them, hey, work is tough right now. Transportation is tough right now. Hotels are tough right now. I was like, I'm missing like three key elements, or there's three key factors in me not making this weekend work. And the main thing, what it came down to, is funny, is I found a way to get down that I could do. Work was cool with me taking off, and I found a hotel thing for that, but I realized that I don't think I'm at that convention level to this point. I know it sounds like I'm
Mm,
maybe being a bit modest because maybe I am, but inventory right now, definitely not there. I need more. Presentation, I was just imagining some of the other bigger tables, and I've done a couple little mini like signings, stores, one little con that was like an indie artist con in Austin, and each time it was just sometimes people just had a scrap table together with their stuff and little sharpied on signs and all that. And I was like, Indie
yeah.
Comic Con's gonna be a beast. I mean, these people have been preparing all year. These people do these cons. Some of these creators do them every week. So
Yeah.
it's like I don't think I'm there yet. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think honestly, when it comes down to it, when next year comes around, we could have a trade at that point, or at the very least, we could have a full run. That'll be
Yeah.
a good time to do it. And another thing I learned from the lesser known comics community, specifically the chat, is one of the most important things about planning for a con is as many issues two, three, four, five you have like quadruple issue one of that. And I was
Yeah.
like, I think I have maybe 10 to 15 copies of issue one right now sitting in my room, and like a ton more of two and three, because nobody's going to go to a con and get issue two and three unless they already have one. And you know, a shitload of people are going to buy one and be like, I'll let you know what I think. And that's
Yeah.
great too. Or I just need one, I'm not looking to spend more than 10, 15 bucks today,
Yeah.
at least at this table. And yeah, so I was like, I need more issue ones and I need to be more prepared. And next time I
Mm,
will do that convention because I am very excited about it. I saw some pictures. It looked like a blast.
that's awesome. I mean, I
Going
do
back to
think
Indie
it's
Comic Con, they were great.
listen, I wish that we had more. I just worked the Middletown Comic Expo, and it was all indie creators, publishers, vendors, artists, all the whole nine, and everything was very independent. There were no celebrities. There were like, keep the my wife loves the pop culture aspect of the expos. We go to the big like Cincinnati Comic Expo,
Nice.
and that gets all of the like actors and voice actors and the famous people and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Where's like Artist Alley? Like, I just want to talk to the indie guys. And so I loved that it was very indie centric, and I'm hearing more and more. And maybe it's just because like once you buy a red car, all you ever see are red cars. And so
Sure.
now that I'm focusing more intentionally to just find indie comics, I'm seeing more posts about all of these really awesome indie comic cons, like where that's the name. Um, and I'm
Yeah,
seeing more and
it's
more
like a
about
trend
it.
too, it's a growing trend for sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just think I think it's awesome. And I wish
Oh,
that I
totally.
had more that were within an easy, like half day drive. Cause I would happily drive 5 hours to go to like an indie comic expo if I knew that it was just going to be a bunch of indie folks. Cause it's got to be like regional too, cause I've been to conventions like 2 hour, 3, 4 hours north of here. And I've been to conventions like 3, 4 hours south and west and whatever.
Mhm.
And I see some of the same vendors that like just live in this area. Like, yeah, no, like I just go to all the Midwest cons. Um, and so I would imagine if I were to like, if we were to swap geographic locations
Mhm.
and I were going to your cons and you were to go to mine, we would see completely different creators. Even though if I go to any of the ones near me, I know like, oh, I'm going to see him. Yep. Oh, yep. There's that. Yep. And like, I keep seeing the same vendors because they just live in this region. I would love it for there to be a way to like break that travel and the hotel stuff, and maybe that's virtual conventions. Have you ever done
Which
those?
are I did one. I believe I did. I think I didn't fully attend it, but I think I went to like one or two of the little virtual seminars, but I didn't get like the full pass, or anything like that.
Okay.
But I believe it was a Comics Wellspring one specifically, which is the
Okay. Yeah.
printing company, as you know, probably.
Yep.
Just for the audience, the printing company that works with lesser known comics, and pretty directly, but they also have their own entity. But they had a little virtual con with some pretty sizable artists and writers, and like I said, I think it might have even been on like shared on Insta Live at one point, or like there were
Mhm.
YouTube videos collecting some of the panels later. So I wasn't necessarily in attendance by any means, but I would like to do some virtual cons.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to double back about something that's really, if that's cool for a second, when we were
Absolutely.
talking
Yeah.
about gassing up local creators and then just working with people, and this does tie into conventions as well. I found, and you might notice this too, that a lot of when you have art, and I'm not an artist per se. I'm a creator and a writer, but I have art because Lost and Tarnation belongs to me, and it's my baby.
Yep.
And when you have art, and it doesn't matter if you're a singer, if you're a street artist, if you're a writer or a DJ, you can operate in such an interesting, in good kinds barter system with other artists. Where
Mm,
when I started doing conventions and the local ones, like the little mini ones at coffee shops and stuff that a couple of my friends put together, I realized that a lot of the artists there and the writers there I met were just like, hey, copy for a copy, floppy for a floppy, that kind of
yeah.
thing. And I was like, is that cool? Sure. Yeah, that's cool by me. I was just giving you one kind of thing. And then I realized as I had more and more physical copies that I would just go to concerts and make friends with some of the bands. And I literally
Mm,
know this wonderful Austin band called the Holy Temple. We've done a whole thing together. I want to work with them in the future. They're a psychedelic rock band, so they kind of fit the vibe anyway. But one
yeah.
of the times I went to their show in one of the venues in Austin, I just went up to the singer after the show. I was like, "Hey man, you're awesome, and I followed you on Insta, and I love your art, and I love your design. It's like, would you be interested in reading my comic? Isn't that a weird thing to say? But I was like, would you be interested in reading my comic? Never met this dude. And he was like, yeah, I'd be interested in reading your comic. You seem like a cool dude. You're wearing a cowboy hat and a frilly denim jacket and like all these rings and stuff. He's like, you're probably a and I was like, I'll take it. And so I sent him a digital copy. And then ever since, we've become friends. And one show I went to, that was the first thing. The second show, he was like, have a t shirt. The third show, I was like, have the first three issues. The fourth show, I was like, here's a poster. And as I've gone to more and met more and more people in Austin, because Austin's also a very artistic, hip town,
Mhm.
I realized that the barter system is real when you have art. You can just kind of spread digital copies, physical copies, send your stuff out and get things in return, not like in a weird way, but just in like to exchange art and to
Yeah.
exchange information in that sense. And I thought that was a really interesting experience I had. That was a good trigger to my understanding of how like a lot of artists operate, and really everyone just wants you to read and see and listen to their stuff anyway, or share it, and even on a shirt, and wear a shirt of your favorite band.
Yeah.
So beautiful. I think Austin's an incredible city, by the way. Ever since I moved down here, it's been so inspiring.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Mm,
I Austin is one of the cities that I would love to get to because everybody that has either been to Austin, traveled to Austin, driven through Austin was like, man, I wish I had more time there. And it's like I haven't heard anybody be like, man, those Austin people are jerks. I've
yeah,
never heard that. It's always like, no, it's a cool town. It's any town that emphasizes art, I just think is great. And I love that about Cincinnati because they're trying really hard. They're really trying. It's not always done well, but they're really trying to just attract more like musicians, and the theater scene is trying to grow and expand. And as a theater kid, like I love to see that. I love to go. We went to a show that a friend of ours just like produced and put together in a little black box theater downtown, and it wasn't my scene. The show itself, I was like, this is not what I would seek out, but I'm supporting him, and like I'm supporting local arts. And so by me spending money to come here and then buying a drink and buying my wife a drink, whatever, it like that's our way of trying to show the city and the venue and like everything else, like, no, these things matter, like arts matter. And
absolutely,
it like comics can be a really welcome distraction from some of the nonsense that's happening in real life. And like
absolutely.
they can be, as you mentioned, like they can be therapeutic, and they can make, like, as a kid I was a weird kid, shocker. And I found solace reading the X-Men because I was like, they're weird too, and they're still doing really good things. And so like maybe I can do good stuff even though I'm weird. And like that just kind of cemented itself, and it's because I was reading comics that I found that I was comfortable with like just being a weirdo. And so like all that very nonsensical rant to say like arts matter, and I love that that's a
Absolutely.
thing in the community. Because I've never been a tangible creator. I'm always the like, I have the tech mind and I can talk. Like that's the thing for me. My sister on the other hand is a painter and does all of these things, and now she's doing personal training, and it's insane what she's doing now. But she, when she was doing the painting and making art and stuff, I was never around, like she wasn't cool to me at the time. And so like I didn't hang around her to get any of that like sense of what her experience was as an artist. And so it's interesting to me hearing like, yeah, it's just like the bartering system of like, hey, can I give you my thing and I'll check your thing out? I'm like, that'll be cool.
Absolutely. Even if it's just information, even if it's just like listen to this or share this, even no money has to go across hands. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a physical exchange. Because I've shared a lot of digital copies for digital copies, and with the intent. I would never want to receive something that I think is not of equal value to what I'm giving, but at the same time, too, I would never want to receive something with the intent to just be like, I'll throw it on the shelf.
Mm,
If I'm sending somebody my art, I would also want to be exchanged the courtesy of just being like, hey, I'm sending you something I really care about. This is my baby. I'm letting you hold my baby. That's the analogy. You can hold my
yeah.
baby, but say something nice about my baby.
Right.
Even if it's not in public on a platform, tell me you don't like my baby. I'll take criticism too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let me know that like you took the time to appreciate the baby.
Absolutely. Hold the baby. Respect the baby. What an
That's
analogy.
that's
I
awesome.
was gonna say, my family is also just to give you a little background on me. It sounds like you come from a family, at least the sister size of creatives, and intelligent people. I could tell you're a very intelligent dude, very articulate,
Oh, thank you.
and like we have a very intellectual family. Myself, my family is almost entirely educators, which is interesting. Dad, mom, my
Yep.
brother, my sister for a while, or my sister permanently, my brother for a little bit, and so I was always a bit of the black sheep. I was definitely a reader. I love learning and I love studying and all that kind of stuff and schooling. But I've always been more of a let's just like try something. And comics
Mm,
were my one of my weirdest, most successful attempts at trying something completely out of my ballpark for, going to school for screenwriting and writing is definitely the screenwriting is the good platform, the bedrock for the comic part. But
yeah.
I've tried so many. I've tried photography, I've tried music, I've tried painting, for a while. And I think comics was my most successful venture. And it's good to feel successful at something because my family, again, very intellectual, very successful family, wonderful people. And I've always kind of like veered away from that. I was the older brother who left the hometown who is usually looked up to, but in my case I just kind of like let myself get into shenanigans and create some of these stories that actually happen to me that do manifest in a inspired way in the comics. So hey, I'm making them worth the while.
There you go. Yeah, I sometimes go more so with my wife's family, uh where like we'll be at a just a family picnic or whatever, and they'll be talking about whatever they're talking about, and I'm just like, can we just talk about horror movies and comics? Like,
Yeah.
where which group is that conversation? It's not. Okay.
Oh, politics again. Shoot.
Well, I'm here if you want to talk comic books and horror movies,
Absolutely.
because I'm so sick and tired of talking politics. I like when I was seeing a therapist, I was telling her about like frustrations with like every time I talk to my parents, they only ever want to talk politics, and like I just don't. Is that just like an old person thing, or like what the hell? And she was like, well, I mean, maybe for them it is like they're all I my parents are divorced and both remarried. So I have two sets of parents. So all four of my parents are retired and, doing retired people things,
Sure.
which for them, like my dad just has to stay busy. And I think he's the one I get the ADHD from because I just have to also be busy. And then, but like he leans hard one way and then my mom leans very hard the other way, and like they both think that I think like they do, and I'm like, I disagree with both of you. I don't know how to tell you, like anarchy.
Yeah.
And uh my therapist was like, maybe you should just set some boundaries, like just, hey, I'm just not going to talk politics. Like I'm not with you because we disagree and we see things differently. And I was like, ooh, I'm not good at setting healthy boundaries. Okay, note taken, thank you. But it's so when we go to family functions now, I'm just like, whatever we're talking about, like I'm just going to be authentic to who I am. And so I'll talk about Marvel movies or, what comic books I'm doing, or, yeah, I was at this convention, and this is the music I'm listening to and whatever. And if they don't vibe with it, like they don't have to talk to me. And that's fine.
Absolutely.
Like, that's okay. Because everybody has their thing. and not everybody's thing is the same thing, and like that's okay. So
Yeah.
I just kind of lean into that thought process anytime that I start to have that imposter syndrome around family, where I'm like,
Oh, that's
I'm
ain't that a bee, that imposter syndrome.
it is. It really is.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I heard this funny joke once or watched it on a live stand-up that just reminded me of your conversation. Mark Maron, who's part of the WTF podcast, great guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure you like him as an interviewer.
Yeah.
He has this joke about how to, not how to, but just like him exactly kind of imagining the only way to talk to like somebody from an extremely, I won't get into politics, from one extreme side to another extreme side. And it's like there's so many differences nowadays. It's no longer, a two party. It's no longer this, that we've all come to like we can't even have conversations with each other about anything. And he was like maybe burritos. And he's like, I'd find like a redneck. I'd be like, what do you think about burritos? He's like, yeah, burritos are cool, I guess. And he's like, okay, how about Tom Petty? And he's like, okay, you got me there. Tom Petty's cool. And he's like, all right, burritos and Tom Petty. Those are two things we can agree on, even though we agree on virtually nothing else. It
Yep.
just I like thinking of those two items whenever I think of politics. I'm like, let's talk burritos or Tom Petty. Let's not talk
Let's
about this
talk
election.
burritos with Tom Petty. I am gonna mark that. I'm gonna write that down. Because I love that. Okay, so because we're talking burritos, do you have a what's your, do you are you a fan of burritos? Do you love
Oh, I
burritos?
love those, absolutely.
Do you have
And
a
Tom
favorite?
Petty.
Do you have a favorite burrito place, and like what's your go-to order? Let's
Yes, oh
talk
my goodness.
food.
Yeah, food's always a good thing to talk about. There's some wonderful, amazing food, obviously, in Austin, but there are a lot of things I've noticed recently when I don't go out to eat a lot, so because I work so often and my main job is a reception job, and it's usually like I'm on call and I do a lot of it and I make good money and it's a very lovely job. But because I'm working a lot, I'll just DoorDash a lot, which seems so lazy, and the prices are always so much higher, but it's like a really nice way DoorDash is to discover things you might not be able to make the trip out to do or
Mm,
see and experience. And if you get the takeout, you can get them from some fancy places too. So one of the things DoorDash does now is they do food trucks. And I've noticed this more in Austin. I've never noticed this in Milwaukee, where I used to live, in Wisconsin, or even Chicago, but Chicago probably does it now. But to get food from food trucks ordered from DoorDash is such a funny experience to me. And I've discovered some absolute bomb banger food trucks, including one called Super Burrito, very unassuming name, but
mhm.
they have this incredible deep dish nacho tray that's only 13 bucks, and it's like this big, and it's just layers of cheese and chips and meat and jalapenos and stuff, and I'm
So
getting hungry
good.
just talking about it.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah,
don't even like nachos. It's like for some reason their super nachos are my favorite menu item in all of Austin, and it's just a food truck. But food trucks can be some of the best food is in a food truck.
yes, I wholeheartedly agree, and I love that I'm seeing more and more food trucks pop up in like gas station parking lots.
Me
I don't know,
too.
like that's a thing there too? Okay,
In Texas, it's a huge thing.
because I like we always had one that was always in front of like a shut down like nightclub, and they just set up their little taco trailer truck thing. It's Dos Tacos, and like every time we drive by, I'm like, man, I bet they've got some bomb ass tacos. And but like it's in a real sketch part of town, and so it's like if we're gonna go during the day. We're not gonna go at night because like people get stabbed and shot like in that
And
area.
the tacos aren't stab worthy good, I assume.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
They're
I'll
probably
do
pretty
a
close, but not quite there.
lot for a taco. I will not get shot. But yeah, like so that was always just the one. And it was like, yeah, yeah, we gotta go to Dos Tacos. And then now I was just noticing I'm seeing more stuff on social media of like, yeah, we're doing a tour and like we're checking out all the taco trucks and like food trucks that are in gas station parking lots. I'm like, God, that's such a good idea. I don't have the
Agreed.
time or the money to do that, but that's such a cool idea. And so, like, I'm now seeing on that same drive to the grocery store, like the fancy grocery store that we go to sometimes. It's like an international market. And they have all sorts of just bonkers food there. There's stuff that I'm like, what is this? I don't know. We're gonna buy it though. It's like 219, so we're gonna buy it, eat it. But now that same drive, instead of just the one, I see we passed. I think I counted 6 food trucks in gas stations between here and there. That I was like,
Mhm.
damn, where did all these come from? Like, where were they before now?
Demand is high. It's it's a trend, and then the demand, people are realizing they're making money from it, and also the
Yep.
operation costs of a food truck versus a restaurant. Hello,
Yeah,
staff, not a thing.
not a
Chairs
thing.
and maintenance and AC. Oh my goodness, I can only imagine. It's a
Yeah.
lucrative business for sure, especially when the demand's there. I
So
will
you
say this
want to
about
start
tech.
a taco truck?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Hey, I think we agree on it. I think one of the interesting things about Texas, and I learn more about Texas every day living here, but I'd like to explore more of Texas because I don't have the
Mm,
Texan experience in a lot of departments. And I think Lost leans into a lot of like the weird side of Texas that isn't necessarily Austin, because Austin is very populated and hip and moving, and Lost and Tarnation focuses on a lot of just like southern weird creature comfort stuff, just stuff you wouldn't expect, that you
yeah.
might not experience, although you will experience weird things in Austin. These things do happen. But that being said, one of the things about Texas that's interesting to me, and I think I'd be interested to visit your town in Ohio to see if I get that same experience, is there's a lot of the ability to walk, a lot of dogs, very dog friendly area because there's a
Mm,
lot of walking paths. The bus system is really reliable, surprisingly, in Austin. I didn't know this until I
hmm.
moved down there, so I bus everywhere. I've never had to drive, and consistent. And there's even like a train, a couple metro spots now. But because there's so much foot traffic, the food trucks are just everywhere, and I think that takes a lot, and especially if you get boozy downtown areas, or you have UT campus, University of Texas in Austin, which is one of
Yeah.
the biggest Texas schools, obviously. But then if you go to a city like Houston, from what I've heard, probably not as common because Houston is very vast and
Mm,
metropolitan, big buildings and all. My friend who's lived in Texas, and he's my roommate as well most of his life, he tells me like if you like getting around Austin on foot, Houston is just you'll have a nightmare. Like there's no way to drive. That's just highways to the T.
yeah.
And I think in an interesting way, I love this conversation has just evolved into food trucks for so long, but
Yeah.
like, no, it's interesting to think about now that I'm just having this thought that I think food trucks benefit from the ability to be able to move around without having to drive. Because
Mm,
you rarely see somebody driving a car and pulling over because they see a cool food truck, unless the buzz on Google is that good, or Bing or something.
yeah. Yeah. It really is mostly driven, I would think, by locals that know, like,
Absolutely.
oh yeah, I know exactly where Dos Tacos is. I need to go get some tacos. Today is the day. Which hopefully this weekend will be the weekend because I want some good. I worked
I want
a
you to
buddy.
report back.
Man, I yes. All right. I'm gonna hold me to it. Because I need to go. I've been saying I want to go, and been saying I want to go, and we've never gone, and we need to go. Um, and I'm also like I get stuck on like I get hyper fixated on one type of food, and then like I just eat as much of that as I can. And my recent thing is street tacos. Like I just had street tacos for lunch, and I had them like 3 days ago, and like I just want all the tacos. So to move away from food trucks,
You're just
uh,
making me so hungry right now, but
right?
I also am doing that to myself.
So also on your Instagram, you post videos of your karaoke. Um,
I'm glad we
I'm
got here.
I'm curious. What's your go-to karaoke song? Do you have one?
Yes, I do. We haven't been friends on Instagram this long, so it's a little further back than probably what you've seen, but I'd be happy to shoot you a link. I have a video of my favorite karaoke performance and choice. And I like to do this song by the Jonas Brothers. I don't know if you know Year 3000. There's
I
like a
don't think
time
I
travel
do.
song about like him going to the future, and everyone's like bought their famous albums and they meet Kelly Clarkson, but it's set in like the 2000s. So all the references are like Kelly Clarkson and like the early Star Wars and all this silly stuff. And one of the reasons I like to do that song is because it's a crowd favorite. Karaoke is an interesting experience because you can sing your favorite songs, and you can do really well sometimes, but more often than not, if you take a little bit of a take one for the team and sing something like Neon Moon or, Dancing Queen or something like that, you might not know it as well, you might not sing it as well. That crowd energy, that crowd response is going to be what makes the experience for karaoke. And that's why
Yeah,
I do it so often. I do it almost every week because I
that's
love the
awesome.
crowd. But I love that song, and one of my favorite things to do at the end of that song is during the final chorus, and I've learned to be better at this. I do a guttural metalcore death metal screaming version of the chorus, and it's just completely out of left field that everyone's either laughing or cheering or somewhere in the middle, and sometimes moshing and like throwing elbows and stuff.
That's
And it is
awesome.
so funny. And unless you've seen me do it a million times, like a few of my friends have, who again took one for the team by supporting me, despite the fact that I have a one trick kind of mind. It like I said, it can be quite fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have done karaoke all of 2 times in my life. Both times took way more alcohol than I remember taking.
Sure.
But yeah, one of them, I had this bizarre experience in where was I? Louisville. I think I was in Louisville, and there we were there. I was there for work. It was me, a buddy of mine who's about my age, and then our two managers. Our one manager and then like the VP of the company came with us to see. We were doing like auto auction resale stuff. Super exciting things. But we were there on a Wednesday. The auction was on Thursday, and then we were driving home on Thursday night. And so it was Wednesday night. We had all gone out to dinner with the auction house, whatever. And so they went to bed, and my buddy and I were like, "We're in Louisville. Like, we need to go somewhere." And so we went down to the hotel clerk, and we were like, "Yo, where can we go to like have some fun or just do something different?" And he was like, "Got you." Didn't tell us where we were going. Picked up the phone. He was like, "Hey, I got two. I'll send you the coordinates, or like I'll tell you where they need to go." We had no idea where we were going. So we get in this cab because we were both very trusting for some reason of this stranger and then this strange taxi. And he gets in, he was like, "You're the two that the clerk called about?" And we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, you're in for a good night." And we're like, "Where are we going?" He was like, "It's a spot. You just got to
Trust the
know it."
process. Trust the process.
So we go and we're like driving down like suburban streets. We're driving through like old neighborhoods with like really big houses. And we just stop in front of this giant house. And he was like, "All right, this is the Phoenix house. Enjoy." He paid for it. Like, "You don't owe me anything. Just go have fun. Here's my card. Call me when you're done, and I'll come back and get you and take you back to the hotel." And we were like, "Seriously?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't worry. Like, it's taken care of. Just go."
Oh my goodness.
So you go into this place called the Phoenix House in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm not fully convinced it's real. Uh, I feel like we stepped into an alternate dimension because we walked in and there's like a little, you know how like old houses are, right? Where there's just like there's a parlor and a big room, and then it feels like there's a whole separate, different building in the back, but it's all connected by hallways and weird doorways and stuff. That
Yeah.
was this place. Like there was a
Like the house
massive,
in Clue or something.
yeah, there was this massive like bar with the stage, and you could tell that like bands played there, but there was like two regulars sitting at the bar, and we were like, "Yeah, cool place. What the hell? All right, well, let's grab a beer." And so we start walking, and we go through the first door, and like we step into this other long, like on the other side of the house, and it was all neon sand, like tropical bar, and there were like
Whoa.
600 people in there. And I was like, "Where did these people come from?" And so we like, walk around. We're like, "What else is in here?" We found a tiny little room that was no bigger than like 5 chairs and maybe like it was a 2-piece acoustic set. And they were
Oh
just
my
playing like little
goodness.
acoustic music. And we're like, "What is happening?" So we kept going. There was like a metal core like screamo band playing to like their wives, which was awesome. And then we walked in and they got excited when we walked in. And then we stayed for 2 songs and walked out. And like there was it just kept going. And we ended in a room where they were doing karaoke, and there was a girl that had like a birthday sash thing, and my buddy was tanked, and he for some reason thought that we should sing Tenacious D's FHG.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so which I was like, "That's fine, I know the words, I don't need to look at the lyrics, like I'm very familiar." And so he was like, Song goes out to the birthday girl. I was like, no, it doesn't. We don't know her. We don't,
No, it
we
doesn't.
don't,
Nope, nope.
we are not dedicating this song to a total stranger who's turning 21. She's like, it's my 21st. I was like, we're not doing this.
That's a
So
good call. Revoked.
we sang the song, and then abruptly, just like everybody was just like, I can't believe these two just did that, because I leaned into it. He's dancing, doing all this stuff, didn't know the song at all, so he was just there for the vibes. We
Sure.
finished the song, and I was like, we gotta go right now. And so I grabbed him, and he's trying to like sign autographs and be stupid, and I was like, nope, we're leaving. And we just walked out the front of the building, and that
Oh
was
my God,
the
that's
first
so
time I
funny.
ever did karaoke. And
That's inspiring to me. That's almost like a lost story in a nutshell, like of something that I would put in a comic.
it
I
could
did
be.
want to mention to you actually because you mentioned we were going to do the karaoke question at some point.
Mhm.
This is another little sneak preview thing. As you've noticed, my Instagram is very karaoke heavy, and I cannot take full credit for this because one of my commenters and a good friend of mine, he on Instagram at least, I don't think we've ever met. He made a comment at one point that was just like, "Hey, you post a lot of karaoke," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of my personal page along with my comic." I'm like, "I should have a professional page, but I just kind of lean into the,
Yeah.
like I have a personality. I dress up fun. I do silly things outside of my comic. It makes me human." But they were like, "Have you ever considered like writing a karaoke scene into Lost in Tarnation?" And I was like, "You know what? I hadn't, but it is going to happen." In issue 4, maybe, if not issue 5. And one of the interesting things about that is something you may not have known. And I don't tell a lot of people this, but it is common knowledge now because I just recently posted about it. The title Lost in Tarnation is something I did come up with based on the spoof of Lost in Translation, the movie, the Sofia Coppola and wonderful movie.
Yep.
Meets like, what in Tarnation? But when I created it, when I came up with it and was pitching it and was writing a script around it, I didn't do as thorough research as I thought. And I do this all the time now. I just was looking the title up and I was like, oh, Lost in Tarnation is the name of a song. And I was like, oh, this isn't an original thought. I stole someone's title. But it was so interesting. The singer of the song is Dewey Ivy. Wonderful. He's in a bunch of bands now, including this band called Sad Cell, Austin Band, Party Van Austin Band. He's from Austin, Texas.
That's
He's an
wild.
Austin dude. So because of this, and because he's on Bandcamp and has a nice following, but not to the point of like record labels that would just not even read my email, I reached out to him and I reached out to his record label and I said, hey, I created this comic book with the idea that I had this title that was an original title, but I realized you guys have this title. And I was like, is there any way I could license it? Is there any way I could use it without getting into trouble? Is there anything like that? And they were so nice. The rep I spoke to, I didn't speak to Dewey at this point, but I have met him since in person. We've become friends. And the rep I met, talked to, was so nice. He was like, "Hey, titles don't have copyrights. You can use it." And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Because it is kind of unique. It's kind of like, and I don't ever want to come to the point where it's just like, you feel like I took this and now I'm like here and maybe the song is not there as much or
Yeah.
vice versa. But it came to the point where, long story short, I heard about this karaoke comment or read the karaoke comment. I was like, that's a great idea. And then I realized how fun would it be if I reached back out to Dewey Ivy and I was like, can I create a karaoke scene in one of my issues that includes the song Lost in Tarnation, where he's singing the lyrics of the song and the lead singer is singing it. And you think it's like, this show has a theme song now, or this comic has a theme song now, but it's just this manifestation of like, almost like it had to happen this way. Like this is
Yeah.
just coming together. It feels like the puzzle pieces interlocking kind of thing. And Dewey was all about it. So it's going to be a scene in an upcoming issue where
That's
the
so
song
rad.
Tarnation is being sung at a karaoke bar by our lead creator, who is our lead Peter, who is lost in Tarnation, of course.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's such a wild, like, full circle.
Exactly. I
I
mean,
love
that's
it.
how life works though, man. The universe is full of circles. It's just
Yep.
like, it's like everything kind of just especially when you're doing something you really believe in and something you're really passionate about and you can just draw those connections, you can let the universe guide the circular patterns and the
Mm.
circular satisfactions. Not everything in life has a resolution. I've learned this over the years. I'm 33 now, and I've had a lot of experiences at 33, more than a lot of even people I know at that age have had. And because of it, I've come to peace with all the resolutions I cannot have, but also seek out resolutions and ways to have self fulfillment through the things I'm very passionate about, including this comic book.
That's
Very something
awesome.
I'm very passionate about.
I love that. So how do people find you?
Yeah, that's great. I am on Instagram primarily. It's at Lost in Tarnation Comics. I will be also eventually, as I am a published comic book creator who is with lesser known comics, which is just weird to say. Sorry, I have to say it out loud. Otherwise,
No.
I'm just I've never been published yet. It took
So-
me so long. I was working so hard. But because I'm published now, the comic book is going to be re-released in a labeled way with the lesser known comics logo and a couple pages of inserts of just like, hey, what we do. Here's where to print your comics. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna turn into like an actual comic book. With the ads and everything. I love ads in comics. Is that a weird thing to say?
no,
Isn't that kind of funny? This is a side thought, but one of the reasons I love floppies is I love ads in comics. I miss the old ones, like the Got Milk ones and
yeah,
stuff like that. But I love seeing like what's coming up, or like the little like memories and stuff like that of lost creators and lost artists. I
yeah.
love floppies for ads. I don't know. That's a weird thing to
See,
say.
I love the like letter columns that
Yeah,
always
me
were at the
too.
end. Like I love reading those because that was before social media. If you wanted to tell a creator or something like, "Hey, I love this book," or "This character's awesome," and like, "Can't believe you did this and this," but like that was the
Yeah.
way to do
Even
it.
if
Where
you're
she had,
angry, and I love the letters too that are like people that are like, "Hey, I do not like how you did this in this issue," or like, "Why is Sue Storm have this outfit when she should," stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Um, but just to bring it back, I'm on Instagram mostly. Lost Tarnation Comics. I can be found that way if needed to find a digital copy, a physical copy, anything like that. Right now, I'm doing self fulfillment. I'm happily sending out the digital copy for anybody inquiring and selling issues 1, 2, 3 physically, and shipping all over myself. And normally, what I do with the digitals is I sell issues 2 and 3, and they are on Global Comics. One is always free on Global Comics, and anybody who wants to read one can read one. That's how I feel about the digital. Some people want to pay block even issue 1 of their comics, which is understandable because
yeah,
we've got to make a living. But I'm almost like, I think Image Comics does this or did this at a time where their first issues were always $1, and then the subsequent issues were more. Is that what
yep.
Image does?
They did reprints where they
That's
did
right.
the image firsts, and they would reprint first issues of their big titles and sell them for a buck. Yep.
I love that concept. I like the idea of that because it's like I have a buck to spare to read
Yeah.
Invincible. I have a buck to spare to read Knights. It's like and then if you hook me, hey, I'm gonna come back.
Yep.
But that's what I'm doing with the digitals, and then eventually I will come to a point where lesser known comics is going to be selling, starting with issue 1 and a to be determined date. The issues of Lost Incarnation, spaced out as far as they need to with their release calendar. Issue 1 is coming, and one of the most exciting things about my recent interactions with the creator, or at least owner currently, Mark, and this wonderful logo designer named Amal, who I will find his Insta at some point and plug that.
Mm.
As long as I post the logo, I will give him a plug as well. He saw the logo originally for Lost in Tarnation, which is mostly just lettering, black lettering on some panels in the first couple issues and subsequent ones. And he was like, "Hey, everything looks great here. The art looks great. Jorge's cool." But he's like, "But I think I got a better logo design in mind, and I did not expect how good this logo was going to turn out. And I am dropping it, I think, tomorrow." There was no
Oh,
like
cool.
timetable on it. There was no like, he was like, "Oh, wait until this time." But we have tweaked it a little bit, just little color bit differences, and it's juicy. I like it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's the official questions. I do have two more things though for you.
Oh, you're good.
So the first is, and I explain this because I don't know, feel like I'm an oversharer. That's part of ADHD things for me. So I, um, in the spirit of like DIY and indie creators, instead of me choosing how you're going to look by like scrolling through our interview and finding a thumbnail and taking a screenshot and then using that for the YouTube thumbnail, instead, let's just pose and I'll take a screenshot and then I'll use that for the YouTube thumbnail. So
Cool.
I will get my keyboard shortcut here
Awesome.
and you can, yeah, see. Ooh, I like. Okay, all right.
Like
I don't
I'm a
have.
little dark. I apologize. My whole face has been dark this whole time. So let me do a little bit more of a. Maybe I'll just be mysterious. Yeah.
Yeah, lean into it.
Lean it. That's better.
All right, I'll give you a 3 count here. 1, 2, 3. Great. All right, cool. The last
And the
thing,
rest of the interview, I'm like, hee hee. That's my hardcore pose. And the rest of the interview, I've
dark
just
and
been like, let's talk
mysterious.
Doritos. We're having fun.
That's awesome. The last thing is when I run out of questions, which I have officially, I like to turn the table over to the creators. So part of why I love doing this show is because I get to hear how just indie creators are passionate about their stories, about their books, about what they've done. And everybody has a different story, but all of us love comics. So um, if you have anything that you want people to hear or see that are watching this right now, thanks for hanging out with us live. I didn't realize that we're coming up on the hour and a half mark. I don't have timelines. I don't censor my guests.
It's
Like,
okay. This has been exactly as much time as I've needed to talk about a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about. So this has actually been perfect. And the extras
perfect.
and stuff. Yeah.
I love hearing that. Yeah. So if there's anything that you want anybody to hear or see from you, it could be about Lost in Tarnation. It could be about why a white cowboy hat is better than a black cowboy hat. Contact content doesn't actually matter. It's just the fact that I want to shut up and let you just have platform to share whatever about whatever. So the time and floor is yours, my friend.
Absolutely. I'll say this about gosh, that's such a setup. I love that though. That's wonderful. That's amazing. Um, we have I'm gonna get a little philosophical, I think. That's what I'm gonna do with my minute. When I was in my 20s, especially my late 20s, I was so terrified of turning 30. It's so silly to me now. I was so terrified of turning 30. And I'm 33 now. And one of the favorite things I learned after turning 33 is that it's the Jesus year, I guess. And my roommate was like, "Oh, you're in your Jesus year." I was like, "I wonder what that means." And I quote this all the time. I was just like, "What does that mean? Am I going to be criticized? Am I going to be like it's like learning? Have an audience after all." Uh, but I think the way he meant it was he was like, "You're going to manifest your destiny a little bit. You're going to create
Mm.
things. You're going to make things happen that are going to be good for you." And in this year, I have had promotions. I hit the publishing mark. This happened after I turned 33. That was when that happened. It was pretty much right after. And so many wonderful things have happened that made me realize that as I got older and older, my 30s became more foresight, more recognition of my talents, more also just carefully in my decision making. I still definitely get up to some of the shenanigans that Peter gets up to. Nothing as scary or hardcore, honestly, at least not anymore. But there's definitely stuff in there that I just allow myself to have fun because I have free will and I, do stupid things sometimes. But for the most part, I just realized that when I turned 33 and as I've gotten older, that free will, that whole manifesting my destiny thing has just become more wonderful and more of an experience. And none of that would have really happened to just tie this together with a bow if I hadn't moved to Texas. And I love Texas. Austin is literally, and I tell this to tourists, I tell this to locals, I tell this to everyone I meet, because Austin's so friendly. You can just talk to a stranger for an hour at a bar. I've had this experience. And Austin is literally my favorite city in the world, traveling all over the world. I did a lot of traveling out of this country as well. And I just love it here. And me moving down here was a big process of grief, of trauma, of escaping some stuff, but also allowing myself to evolve past the person I was when I was living back in a place that I felt I was getting to the age of 30 and I wasn't doing anything at the time. I wasn't creating. I wasn't as creative. I wasn't an artist. I wasn't a writer. And I do believe aging is scary, but it's also a wonderful opportunity to let yourself grow and let yourself, manifest your destiny. And because we have free will, you don't have to stay at that place. You can leave anytime you want from your home. You can leave your country. You can leave your city. It just you gotta follow that stuff though. That's so important, you know.
Yep.
Sorry, that was a ramble.
No, I love it. Like I love doing this because like everybody has something completely different that they spend their time with. And sometimes we get stuff like that where it's just like, yeah, if anybody listening to this is on the fence or like about creating something or making your book or making a move or quitting that job that sucks because your boss is an asshole, like sometimes you just need to hear like you can make the decision. Like you can say
Absolutely.
yes to that thing that feels terrifying. And sometimes, like similarly, I am older. I am not 33, haven't been 33 in 5 years, but I like just this year started this show. I started this in March, and it honestly started out of a need to keep a creative outlet. I was doing a radio show before this, and was like, "Hey, that platform's it's not going to be an option come June, so like it's going to end." And I was like, "Well, I can't stop doing something creative. Maybe it's time to pull the trigger on this show about comics because I love comics, and I still got to talk music because I love music." And so, like, how do I marry those two? Well, I don't know anybody else that's doing a thing that marries comics and music. So, like, that could be a niche market. Okay, I could have an audience there. Cool. And then I just like started taking steps, and every marathon starts with a mile, and every mile starts with a step. And like, you just have to take that first step, and then suddenly you're building momentum, and you're getting there, and you're making progress, and you're learning. And like, things aren't always going to be amazing, but there are going to be amazing highlights throughout. And sometimes you meet some really awesome people doing stuff that is just outside of your comfort zone. And so like I love that that was kind of your like do the thing. Like just
Absolutely.
it can
Just
be
do the thing.
scary, but like
Take the picture, take the photo,
yeah.
jump in, dive in.
Yep. I think that's where we should end it. That's what we should do.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It was
I
such a pleasure. This is so fun.
I man, I had a blast talking to you. And if I ever end up in Austin, or when I end up in Austin, I'm gonna look you up, and we're gonna go out and maybe do
Make sure that
karaoke
plate of
together.
nachos. We're gonna nachos. And we're gonna do karaoke.
Yes, it sounds so good to me. Hang out after I click the end stream button. I got some logistics for you. But
Sounds
what
good.
is a good podcast without a good tagline? And this is mine. Go do what's good for you, punks. Read and maybe even make some indie comics. We are out of here. Talk to you next time.